A few weeks ago, we were talking about how EB1 became unavailable. Now we got the news that EB2 is next, and EB2 visas are unavailable for the rest of fiscal year. The good news is that the fiscal year starts in October 2024. Hi, my name is Oscar, and as you know, I'm a scientist, not a lawyer. And in this channel, we cover green cards like EB1A or EB2 NIW, which you can self-petition. And that means that you can do this without a lawyer, saving a lot of money, and also without a job offer, without a company that sponsors you. Today, we're going to cover news, because in our last video, we were talking about how EB1 became unavailable, visa numbers ran out for the year, and I was telling in that video that EB2 may be next, and indeed, yesterday, thanks to one of our viewers, I learned that State Department announced that EB2 has the same problem, and I'm going to put problem between quotation marks, okay, because it's not really a problem. Here in this press release, identical to the previous one, just for EB2, we see that the State Department, working in close collaboration with USCIS, is pleased to announce the issuance of all available visas in the employment-based second preference EB2 category for fiscal year 2024. And then they explain why this is good news, why they are pleased. Because by maximizing these visas, they facilitate legitimate travel for individuals with exceptional ability and professionals holding advanced degrees. So they contribute to the American economy. And then they go on to explain that all available EB2 visas for fiscal year 2024 have been used. That means that embassies and consulates may not issue visas in this category for the remainder of the fiscal year. So remember, fiscal year starts in October. That means that each year we go from October to September, and September is the last month of fiscal year. In this case, September 2024, last month of fiscal year 2024. And even though it's a bit scary to hear unavailable or visa numbers running out, it is actually good news, because what we don't want is that those visa numbers to be wasted. If visa numbers are not allocated by the end of September, those numbers will be lost forever. There are some exceptions, but in general, that is the case. So you, as an applicant, don't want that to happen, okay? So it is true for those of you who are in the very last steps of the process and you were waiting for your interview, for example, in an embassy. And by the way, that applies to embassies and also inside the US. You may be caught by surprise and you may be thinking this is a bad problem. I'm not sure if those interviews will still go on or they will be suspended. They may still call you for the interview, but what this means is that they will not give you the visa during September. If you were in that last step of the process, that means that you will not get that. You will have to wait until October, when new visa numbers show up in the system and they are able to give those green cards out. At the end of the video, I'm going to show you how many numbers they have per year, how many for each category, so you really understand how this system works. But before, we're going to see a little bit more about this topic, and we're going to reply a few of the questions you had in my previous video about this topic for EB1, which really applies for EB2 as well. Moving on to that, we had the same information for EB1. You have it here. The press release is almost identical. It's just from August 27. And we had the same press release for EB3 and other workers. And we had the same press release for EB5. So most of these categories are being used up, which again is a good use of the system that the US has, which is not the best system, but it is a quota system. So that means that there are a certain number of numbers. If they don't get used, they are lost forever. Okay. And we knew this may happen because in the last visa bulletin, a few weeks ago when they released the September visa bulletin, they said that there was an increase in demand, and we have been seeing that for 2 years already. So that means that as a result, most employment-based preference category limits were expected to be reached during September, if not sooner. So if at any time an annual limit is reached, it would be necessary to immediately make the preference category unavailable, and no further request for numbers would be honored. And remember that you wouldn't see that in the visa bulletin. If you go now and check the visa bulletin for September, you will not see a U there because they released the visa bulletin before all of this happened. So that's why they put out that press release. State Department does, USCIS doesn't, but they follow the same charts, they follow the same visa number pool. So when the visa numbers are over and State Department says so, that applies also for the USCIS processes for adjustment of status from within the United States. Okay, let's go with a couple of comments or questions that you had in my previous video. And these are more or less on the same lines. The first one, Diego, was saying, hey, the last visa bulletin for EB1 showed EB1 still current. Can I still apply for I-140 plus adjustment of status concurrently? And then another person says, good day. Please, can someone submit his I-140 application by September 2024? Okay, the answer to both of these questions is yes. There's no conflict between this news in EB1 and now in EB2 and your applications in EB1A or EB2 NIW for an I-140, okay? Even if the category is unavailable during the remainder of September, remember it's only until the end of fiscal year, at the end of September, you can still file an I-140. You can always file an I-140. That's why people from India or China whose priority days are really backed up in the visa bulletin, they always can apply for I-140. That's always open. So don't listen to people out there that tells you, okay, the category is closed. No. It's unavailable for a visa number to be granted to you during this month, but you can file an I-140. If you are current in the visa bulletin, for example, most countries for EB1, that means that you can still file concurrently. You can file an I-140 and I-485 for adjustment of status. It just means that it wouldn't be adjudicated during this month. But don't worry, because it wouldn't be adjudicated either. I mean, there's no way USCIS is going to process your I-140 and your adjustment of status in less than 1 month. That doesn't happen. An adjustment of status takes a few months to get processed anyway. So, in other words, this doesn't really have an effect in any of these cases. You can still file I-140. You can still file adjustment of status if you are current. It just means your process will not end during the month of September. And we'll have to see what happens in October when the new visa bulletin comes out. And that's exactly what the next comment was talking about. They say, hey, fingers crossed for a big jump in October. 3 months or more would be fantastic. The waiting is killing me. Okay, the wait for the visa bulletin is always tough, even for me that I already got my green card, but I'm still following all of this. And it is nerve-wracking not knowing what day they are going to release the visa bulletin and even what time they are going to release the visa bulletin. I would expect that this visa bulletin for October is going to take a little bit more time because they probably need to do a lot more calculations when it comes to the new fiscal year. In fact, if I don't remember wrong, I think last year it came out around the middle of the month, around the 15th. But that doesn't tell you anything because they could do whatever they want and maybe they will release it today and I'll have to swallow my words. But I also hope there's a jump. Now, with this news happening, does it have an effect? Not so much. I mean, it is true that the categories being unavailable means that people can still file adjustment of status, and those are accumulating. So when they open the gates in October, those cases will be there first, of course. Now, that is the case for any point of time where people are still applying, even if their cases are not being adjudicated, they are adding their cases in the line. So will it affect? Probably not so much. Will we see a jump in October? I can only hope that, but as you know, I don't give out predictions. I have a video talking about that exactly. I really hate to see YouTubers giving exact dates and how many months is the visa bulletin going to move, because I have no clue, they have no clue, and probably 99% of the people working in USCIS and State Department have no clue until they get the news from up above. Last year, we didn't have a big advancement in the visa bulletin in October, even though I hope this year things change. But it is true that usually what happens is that in the beginning of the year, people that are in the US can file their adjustment of status based on Table B. And I expect that to still be the same in October. We'll have to see, but I expect that. And that's a big advantage, a big jump for people in the US, people doing the process from within, which is the majority of the people, by the way. The majority of people that apply for EB2 NIW and EB1A are within the United States. Okay, so quick break and then we'll go back to the numbers. If you are interested in these processes, EB1 or EB2 NIW, we have websites that can help you succeed, can help you, give you the tools to understand how to put together a successful petition. We have eb1greencard.info for that category and eb2niw.info or their counterparts in Spanish and Portuguese. You can find a lot of good information for people like you that want to take the future into their own hands. And among everything we offer, I recommend you check out our online courses. Here on the screen, you have the course curriculum for the EB2 NIW online course. We have 10 modules full of video lectures that are exclusive, that are not anywhere else. And you have them in English, Spanish, and Portuguese. And you can submit questions in each one of them. We show you how to put together your petition, how to craft recommendation letters, how to deal with foreign degrees, how to build a professional plan, and we have discounts with partners that offer external services. And you get priority if you choose to have a review by us at the end of your process. Now, we offer monthly live sessions included in the EB2 NIW course. We do that once a month and you get to meet me and Marina and we answer your questions live. But if you don't want to wait, you can also submit written questions at any point during the month and we'll take care of those. So my question to you is, what are you waiting for? You should join us in the online courses. And now, continuing with this topic, let's see a little bit more about the process that the US follows to assign visa numbers. We talked about this in the previous video, but this is very relevant. There are about 140,000 visa numbers for employment-based green cards every year. This is a mandate from Congress. USCIS, State Department they have nothing to do with this, okay? They follow the law, the law that Congress made. So they have this pool of 140,000 numbers, more or less, and they can give out that number during the year, from October to September. If they don't use those numbers, most likely they will get lost. But there is also a hierarchy on how those numbers are used. For example, EB1 and EB2 get roughly 29% of those 140,000 visa numbers. And that is that 40,000 more or less number that you can almost see here crossed out. I crossed this out because we know now that for this year, EB1 is gone, EB2 is gone, EB3 is gone, and a part of EB5 is also gone. But you should understand that once those numbers for EB1 are done, that's it. If numbers are still available, they go down to EB2. So EB2 would get some extra numbers. And if EB2 has some excess, which is not the case this year, they would go to EB3. Okay? And the same happens with EB4 and EB5. They would go to EB1. So that's the complexity of the system. And we know that beyond these quotas that we are seeing on screen, we also have country quotas. Each country can only get 7% of the total employment plus family green cards, and that is what creates the differences in the visa bulletin. And that's why countries like India or China suffer bigger backlogs than, let's say, European countries or any other country follow what we call rest of world, and that's a more advantageous backlog. Okay, so this year, for fiscal year 2024, we had a little bit extra, 161,000 visa numbers, 20,000 more than the usual, because some numbers were unused from family, and we got them in employment base. But that is not going to be the case moving forward. Most likely, we will not have that many. This is something that has been happening since COVID, but most likely maybe in 2025, if not 2025, 2026, we'll have again 140,000. And that means a little bit less numbers for this category, so a little bit slower visa bulletin if we have the same demand. Because remember, that is why it is so hard to make predictions, or so impossible to make predictions. If we don't know what's the demand, what the demand is going to be over the following months, there's no chance we can predict what is going to happen, okay? The demand in these past 2 years has skyrocketed, and that makes predictions completely useless, because if we were doing predictions by the numbers from 2020, we would be completely wrong. And maybe the demand is going to change next year. Maybe it's going to get worse, or maybe it's going to be better. We just don't know. So I don't want you to focus too much on trying to predict this thing. I want you to focus on your own process. What is the quality of your credentials, of your petition? If you're working on EB2 NIW, of your endeavor, what is the project you are proposing for the US? Is it good for the nation? Does it have significant positive impact? That is the kind of thing that will move the needle in your specific case. Okay, if you want to learn more about this, join our courses. As usual, thank you for being there. Thank you for your support, for liking this video, for subscribing, and I will see you in the next video that hopefully that will be the October 2024 visa bulletin, the first visa bulletin of the fiscal year.